Hey everyone, this is Nicholas the Bard Andrea, aka Mr. Andrea from Enkindle Academy, and I wanted to share this post I've written about the Threefold Social Order in education. There happens to be quite an epic thunderstorm happening while I'm recording this, so maybe the gods are trying to get something through to us here. The question is, why should we introduce the Threefold Social Order in education? Well, if we observe the current political climate in America, at least, and I think this also applies to other countries. We have students, many students in other countries. We see that right now in America, there's two main sides to the political spectrum. There's right and left. And depending on your persuasion in the presidential campaign, you might say there's a third side also, largely being ignored. But what I notice is that on either side, there seems to be very little inspiration and enthusiasm for people's chosen candidate or candidates. More often, what I hear is some version of fear or hatred for the other side. Most people seem to be voting against what they don't want, what they don't like, and what they fear, rather than voting for what it inspires and enthuses them. And I ask myself, how can how can an individual, to begin with, and then a country itself, chart its course forward by focusing more on what it hates and doesn't want than on what it does? Because here's the secret: what you focus on expands. Okay? As a side note, I have a feeling that if people were focused on what really enthused them, things would change. But I digress. So this same process holds true for cultures as it does for individuals. Okay? And so what does this have to do with education? Well, the thing is that this polarizing effect itself creates a kind of a toxic situation in our culture. So what we want to do is we want to educate students to become immune to this polarizing effect. And so we do that by educating students according to the actual reality of the structure of society. So our goal shouldn't be to enroll students in this or that political party or viewpoint. When they become adolescents, middle schoolers, they start getting interested in politics, many of them, regardless. And that's not a bad thing. But really what we should focus on is giving them the bones of society, how society actually works. And I think civics curricula of yesteryear strove to do that, and to some degree they did it by letting students know about the structure of our government and how it works, but they didn't actually address the structure of society as a whole, and that's a problem, okay? Because the fact of the matter is, and I've done a lot of research on this, okay, the truest geometry of society, the geometry, the shape that it actually aspires to, as far as I can tell, is elaborated in a philosophy called the Threefold Social Order. I'm going to touch on this briefly. It's a huge topic, much more than I could cover in a short little post like this, but I'll introduce the basics of it and bring it back to education here at the end. Okay, so let's start with this. The Threefold Social Order arises out of anthroposophy. And what anthroposophy has to say about the human being is a remarkably useful lens to look at a human being as composed of three forces. This also goes back to ancient Greek philosophy. So anthroposophy says that a human being is composed of three main parts or forces: head, heart, and limbs. Okay, you could also say thinking, feeling, and willing, or if you wanted to get physiological about it, you could say the nervous system, the nerve sensory system, the circulatory system, and the metabolic system, which also includes the metabolic organs. Okay, so these three different parts or systems of the human being have their respective jobs to do, and of course they do relate, but they also need to be able to do their jobs with some autonomy from the others. For example, can you imagine what would happen if there was too much nerve and sensing activity in the metabolism? Can you imagine what it would be like to literally feel your food going through every aspect of your digestive system? My God, you would never ever sleep, right? And so you see, the nerve sense system has to be separate from the metabolism. They relate, but they also have to have separation, because otherwise we get a situation where, as one of my former students used to say, yeah, that's no bueno, no bueno, okay? So similarly, society, and this is the beauty of anthroposophy, right? It recognizes that society itself is a macrocosmic expression of the microcosm that is the human being. So society is like a giant human being, similarly composed of three spheres. The cultural sphere, associated with the head and free thinking. The legal or rights sphere, associated with the heart and this process of balance. And the economic sphere, associated with the limbs. All right, so let's talk about these three realms briefly. The cultural realm. This is composed of schools, universities, research labs, churches, artist studios, and any and all other places where new ideas, new inventions, new creations come to birth. And this is the realm that gives society its guidance, that gives society its values in a way. It's where new discoveries are made, right? And so you can imagine that in this realm, people need to be able to work and think freely. Because if you can't think freely, how can you pull new ideas out of the ether? Just in the same way that as an individual human being, your own head needs to operate in freedom. Your thinking needs to operate in freedom, right? It's madness if you can't think freely. Okay, so the cultural realm needs to operate in freedom. We have to let researchers research the questions they feel called to. We need to let teachers make decisions about teaching. We need to let people have freedom of religion. Of course, all within moral parameters, right? Like, you can't let researchers just experiment at will on people without a safety protocol, right? So, this is how the realms also relate. But ultimately, this cultural realm within, of course, safety, moral parameters, needs to be able to operate freely. Can you imagine what happens when government bureaucrats or big money corporations start interfering in the cultural realm? Start telling people how to worship, or what they can and can't research, or what they can and can't teach? This becomes a real problem, right? Because then you start to see that a culture will decay. It will start to lose its guidance. It will start to lose its leadership. And those things will be replaced by agendas, right? In extreme cases, you get things like fascism, right? Okay, so next let's talk about the rights and the legal realm. So we have courts, we have governments, legislative and rule-making bodies, regulatory agencies, police, military, and all of those agents of society whose job it is to maintain balance and fairness, to make sure that life is being lived fairly, that the rules of the game are being respected. Just in the same way that the heart and the lungs, the circulatory system, maintains balance in the body. It's the great healer of the body. It's what, ultimately sends all of those healing cells to the different parts of the body to fight infection, keep you healthy, immunity, and stuff like that. So, in the legal and rights realm, the guiding value has to be equality, right? It can't be freedom. In other words, from peasant to president, all have to be equal under the law. When people start getting exceptions to that, the social fabric, the fabric of the social order starts to tear. And history is filled with countless examples of this. I need not elaborate them here. But then can you imagine what happens when people from the cultural realm, like religious leaders or people from the economic realm, like big corporations, start to interfere with regulatory bodies and interfere with their ability to make laws and rules and uphold them according to the principle of equality? Yeah, well, then you basically get the story of modern government and economic sector collusion, what some politicians, leaders call the corrupt merger of state and corporate power, right? That's disastrous, right? That will turn a country into a banana republic so fast, all right? So, it's another way of saying, like, get the darn money out of politics. And people think, oh, it's such a great ideal. Yeah, well, guess what? It's something that has to happen because the legal realm, the rights realm, cannot actually do its job when it's being interfered with by special interests. Okay? I'm gonna explain how that comes into our current political climate here in a bit. So, cultural realm, freedom. Legal and rights realm, equality. And then finally we come to the economic realm. Here we have businessmen, farmers, merchants, truck drivers, pilots, industry, workers, right? Miners. These are the people that compose the economic realm. They make the world go around, right? They produce and move the goods that sustain our lives, like food, houses, cars, aircraft, computers, whatever it might be, fuel, right? What's the guiding value here in the economic realm? Well, it's brotherhood. This is the most misunderstood thing, probably in the world today, especially in America. What does brotherhood mean in this realm? Well, it means that I work for your needs to be met, and you work for mine. Wait, what? Like, this goes against Puritanism. Like, this goes against that old Baptist ideal, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Doesn't it? Well, the thing is that, you have competition and collaboration, and our Western society especially America, so highly prizes competition over everything else. And the fact is, we actually do need competition. It helps us get better. But the problem is when really we actually need to be prioritizing collaboration over competition, actually cooperation over competition, because otherwise, we end up wasting a lot of energy in the process. So really, collaboration and cooperation need to be more important than competition. We do need competition, but within the context of cooperation. Now, how we actually do this in the economic realm can get complicated. And we explained that in much greater detail in our 6th grade business math block, and especially in the live Zoom enrichment classes that go with it. We explain this in great detail to students. Like I said, it's beyond the scope of this short post, which has already become very long, to explain. But, we go into it in great detail. So, what does this have to do with education? Well, right now, the chasm in America between right and left is growing bigger and bigger by the day. You hear people talking about crazy things like secession of states and even, civil war and stuff like that. And, this is all a bunch of propaganda nonsense being purveyed by profiteering powers who profit by polarizing people. But the only reason they can polarize people is because they've had a crappy education. Let's face it, we've all had crappy educations, most of us anyway. myself included. People meant well, but if it's not arising out of reality, but some half-cocked materialistic version of reality, then it ultimately doesn't have real solutions. So throughout our middle school curriculum here at Enkindle Academy, we start in 6th grade to build a sense for this threefold geometry of the human being and then of society as a macrocosmic expression of the human being. We start introducing this in business math. We expand it in physiology, actually, talking about the human being, and then we continue it through our history and geography curriculum, especially in 8th grade, where we come up into the modern time. We talk about Elizabethan England. We talk about the Industrial Revolution. That's a big one. We talk about the American Revolution and Civil War. We talk about World War I and World War II. We talk about Asian geography, and these are all fertile soils to bring in this and expound on this threefold social order. Okay, and why do we do this? We do this to build students' immunity to the manipulations of polarizing rhetoric. Think about this. The left is really good at protecting rights. That's why you hear all this talk about equality, equity, equality from the left, right? So they do very good in the rights realm. The right focuses very, very good. It does a good job on protecting freedoms, right? They're all about freedom, freedom. Well, yeah, you need freedom in the cultural realm. But both of them really miss the mark on the economic realm. Totally miss the mark. The extreme left, when it goes to its extreme, it applies equality to all three realms and creates a communist hell. The extreme right then applies freedom to all three realms dogmatically, and it creates basically a plutocratic nightmare where the rich keep getting richer and the poor just fall into oblivion, right? And so both of them miss the mark. Okay, and so the reason the whole world is becoming polarized is because not enough people understand the threefold social order. Okay? But imagine a whole new generation of human beings understanding the threefold social order. Imagine what a vastly different society they would create. They would say to themselves, well, the right and the left, they still have their place. And the right is really good in this realm, like in the cultural realm, the freedom piece. And the left is really good in this realm, the legal realm, the rights piece. Like, for example, in America, making sure that white and black people all have equal access to education, to loans, mortgages, to being able to live in whatever neighborhood they want to, right? That kind of stuff. But then, they rather than it becoming a polarity, it would become a conversation. It'd be like, the right has its place here, the left has its place here, and then there's this other realm, which nobody understands yet, but we will, okay? So that's a big part of what we're doing here at Enkindle Academy. So I hope this has been inspirational for you. I'm going to put some links down below if you're watching this on YouTube, so you can check out where we're offering this amazing curriculum on our website. So that's all I have. Thank you very much, and we will see you for the next one. Bye-bye.